20 minutes and 2 seconds. I'll get the extra 2 seconds. I won't use them widely. So, welcome to what I'm calling the dismantling of perception. The dumpster fire in the background represents the state we could be in if we're not careful. And it's cheerful note to start talking, I know. And I feel like after all these really positive talks, I'm going to be the downer, and we're going to end on a downer. So I have an interest in cybersecurity, which I'll go about in a few minutes. People send me random stuff on a regular basis. And I had a non-technical friend ask me about an interaction they had over WhatsApp. It's clearly a scam. It's one of these ones where they start asking messages and things like that. The conversation seemed really convincing and really human. And they said, I don't get it, why do they invest so much of the time on me to try and scam me? Well, I thought, oh, my poor sweet summer child. There's a good chance that I was no man. And that's all part of the problem. We don't even know ourselves nowadays. Most of the time, AI tools are becoming very quickly, especially this year, becoming undetectable, which is an uncomfortable feeling. And of course, what computers do is really excel at speed and scale. So even if there's a human this time around, like in a year or two it won't be, I'm fairly certain of that. Anyway, I'm Jeff Watkins, Chief Product Technology Officer for XDesign, Edinburgh-based consulting. We have offices in Leeds and now Manchester and London. We deliver bespoke applications and services to a number of big name clients, people like Yorkshire Building Society, Flutter Group, Money Supermarket, and many more. This isn't a sales deck, so I'm going to shut up there. But my background is in computer science. But I've also had a long-running interest in cybersecurity. I've just finished cybersecurity masters this year, graduated in July, which is interesting, going back to academia. It hasn't moved on. In 20 years, I'm genuinely using the same book about software engineering, just a few more editions on that I used 25 years ago. And I'm now starting an AI master's degree in January, and we'll see if that's a better experience. So I guess my intention is to know a little bit about both AI and cybersecurity. I'm not an expert in either, but maybe I'll get enough across to give you some very interesting ideas. Your mileage may vary. And obviously AI has been around for a very, very, very long time, since the 1950s. And it's gone through a number of well-documented windows. There's actually a couple of good graphs showing this, where there's a peak, and then there's like, oh, we've reached our limit of our compute power for the most part, storage. But it's a gradual upward trend. Those winters don't mean a drop, they just mean a leveling off. And over 80% of us are using AI on a daily basis already, probably more now. And people are now rushing to implement Gen AI. We've actually released, I don't know if anybody uses the Money Saving Expert app, and the AI, the chat feature on that. So that is a custom GPT that we created. So OpenAI, ChatGPT and the API access, it's on the first thing, really, in my opinion. It's not the first GPT, it's not the first AI, blah, blah, blah. It's the first one, in my opinion, to democratize AI. You could just sign on and start using it like a lord. You know, it's fine. You couldn't do that before. You had to like pay for it, quite a lot for it, or you had to train the model yourself. This is actually, we've now kind of democratized AI. That's kind of great. And it forced Google's hand, because they were saying, we're not releasing our Gen AI model for years. Then what they did was, OpenAI came up with it, they fired their ethics team and said, sure buddy, you can have it. Which says a lot about Google's ethics, I'm sure. So we opened up to the good and the bad actors when we did that. There's a whole bunch of AI ethics talk around how we should or shouldn't be using it, including the major one about the existential threat to us if we all create general AI and super AI. However, that's way off, and I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm not going to go into endgame, Skynet stuff, or kind of Uber Eats eating us, etc. It's something far close to us, and it's a really pressing threat. Overall global cybercrime has increased by 8% this year. And researchers think that the advancements and democratization of AI is basically contributed to this. There's a recently piece of published research by Darktrace showed there's a 135% increase in social engineering this year, again powered by Gen AI. So how serious is this then? Let's put it into some context. $10 trillion. That is the expected cost of the global economy due to cybercrime by 2025. That's a big number. According to Cybersecurity Ventures research, the greatest transfer of human wealth in human history. That's a big heist. However, if you look at some other figures, more recent ones, they look a bit more bleak. The more you dig on this, the gloomier the outlook is. So the GDP of the UK was 3.6 trillion in 2020, to give you some context there. The top of the world GDP list is the USA at 26.7 trillion. So cybercrime as a country, by 2030, will be the biggest in the world. That's a scary thing, isn't it? Before we get to the meat of what some of the threats, the cybersecurity threats of AI, there's a couple of ones that are on us if we get this wrong, it's kind of self-owns. And the first of them is like insider threats. Who here has used Gen AI? By now, I know when I started speaking about this, some people, ChatGPT, anything, yeah. Now, as we're professionals, I hope we're not putting any sensitive information, company IP, PII, and stuff like that into things like GitHub Copilot. It's interesting, isn't it? Like a tool. Where's that data going? Now, actually, OpenAI for the most part probably safe. It's probably not an issue. But first of all, like, are all these tool manufacturers going to be good? And secondly, are they going to get breached? So, so for most of us, if like it's your whatever website's fine. If you're maybe Goldman Sachs, you probably don't want your trading algorithm going outside of your walls. And some people have AI-enabled Slack tools. It's very cool. All of your company information going somewhere else as yet undisclosed, possibly. You basically just backdoored all your private comms if you've done that, unless you've done your due diligence. Also, if you're creating something like a GPT-based service, and we had to deal with some of this, it's very difficult to get around, is people will use prompt engineering to jailbreak your chat or whatever it is you're trying to build. This is called, this is a DAN, a do anything now machine. The problem is if somebody jailbreaks it, then basically they get free GPT, so they can just use your service all willy-nilly unless you put some restriction in there. And the thing is, actually, you can damage your actual company's reputation if you make your AI service say or do something harmful. Getting to the crux of the talk though, all this roundabout nonsense. Seeing the end of sidebars is there's multiple categories of AI attack which are categorized. There's attacks on your AI, automated AI system attacks, and AI automated human attacks. There's a number of different ways your own AI systems and models may be attacked. Some of them are kind of novel, some of them we don't really have much of an answer to yet. There's like model inversion attacks, they kind of aim to infer and reconstruct from the private training data by using numerous devious kind of questions. In fact, some of the open source LMs actually kind of do a bit of a model inversion attack to actually train themselves. You spin it up and it goes and asks ChatGPT 65,000 questions and trains itself on them. That's kind of a less pernicious version of a model inversion attack. And there's other adversarial AI attacks where you can, I don't know if people have seen some of the ones where there's those ones, there's steganography attacks where there's this little white image, you say describe this image, and it says there's 10% off at Sephora or something, because somebody's put something invisible to the naked eye in there with almost zero contrast difference that actually says it has some prompt engineering in it. So when it actually does image to text on there, because as a human you won't see that. So there's a bunch of different things, like from a attack on your AI point of view. It's not really what I want to talk about today. And aside from that, automated hacking our systems is a real problem, and AI can be trained quickly to identify vulnerabilities in software and systems. It can automate and speed up the process of finding things like OS level and cloud security problems, making it harder for us to respond in time. It can also be, AI can also be automated to look at any APIs you have open, like fuzzing attacks, to actually find weaknesses in how you respond to things. But where there's software vulnerabilities, the patches, tools, and we can spot these attempts and vulnerabilities over time, and we hope they will continue to improve. All the tools will continue to improve over time. So the defences and mitigations and countermeasures are going to make this what we call digital lockpicking harder and harder. Cryptographic attacks are getting harder as people are doing more until we get the whole meltdown with quantum, but we're not going there. But like cryptographic attacks are getting harder. It's going to get harder and harder and harder to actually do automated attacks against systems. But what I was at the cybersecurity conference in Leeds recently, and they had actual good figures on the number of attacks on the human are increasing. It's not by bit, it's increasing a lot. The actual, where the soft target. By 2025, which seems to be a very busy year, the commoditization of AI-enabled fraud is going to be so huge that they expect many organizations will take a much more human-centric approach to cybersecurity. It's going to be about protecting us, not the systems as much. And it's partly because our actual perception of what's going on is going to be challenged. Hopefully we know by now we don't believe everything we read, you know. Unfortunately, that prince somewhere in other countries probably not going to send you $2.5 billion. Yeah. Has anybody heard of Dr. David Burkus? So he's a leadership author. And he mentioned actually these scam emails. I thought they had bad English in there because it wasn't their first language. It turns out they put typos in because they want to spot somebody who would actually go through it even if it's full of typos, because that's a really gullible person. I'm not joking. It's that cynical. Cyber criminals are using AI tools to hack passwords, leak confidential information, scam users across a number of platforms. And this is actually 82% of people are really afraid of falling prey to some of these deceptions. And the threat of AI in this context is Gen AI especially, it's actually lowering the bar of entry to actually doing these attacks. And it's making them more variable. Because before you know, well, I've got to have, 10 different template attacks, and then of course your filter's going to pick them up. They're getting more believable, and they're getting more easier to automate and becoming more varied. And that makes it really hard to prevent. It's more creative, so it's bypassing a lot of the more heuristic-driven tools. Of course, OpenAI does what it can to prevent people from using its source free. I don't know if you've ever had anything blocked on Bing Image Creator or something, even if you haven't done anything naughty, it'll sometimes say, I can't do that. But now, if you pay the low cost of $200 a month, you can get access to Fraud GPT. That's a real thing. The origins of this LLM are not clear, because obviously it's all dark web, but there's 3,000 active users on it. Cyber criminals are already using it for nefarious purposes to create fraud, which just blows my mind. We're now seeing phishing as a service using AI. And imagine hostile nation states are already tooling up to use this almost as an act of cyber warfare. That's the written word though. That's one attack vector. We're used to that. But then actually, we've actually seen real-time voice cloning, or not just the kind of recorded stuff, but real-time voice cloning. And one tool identified by Europol in 2019, a CEO of a UK-based energy company was tricked into paying £200,000 by scammers who cloned, done an audio deepfake. And allegedly the MGM hotel chain, that was breached using a phishing, not phishing attack, but a phishing attack. This is voice phishing. And apparently 90% of cyber attacks start with phishing, but if it's voice phishing, it's 3 times more likely to be effective. Because people believe it. You don't really believe what you read anymore necessarily, but you believe what you hear. However, it's not just limited to voice. By way of example, when it comes to things like image-based AI, in only a couple of years, we've gone from very crude modeling capabilities. I don't know if you remember, like Deep Dream and First DALL-E, pretty crude stuff. Very obviously synthetic. I mean, it was startling. When I first saw this, I was like absolutely gobsmacked. I thought, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. But it's not particularly realistic. And then, within 2 years, we've gone to this, where Midjourney and DALL-E are producing very realistic synthetic images, which is very nice. This is the stuff we have access to. This is only the stuff we have access to. People have access to much more. This image is from a tech demo promo from NVIDIA, where they did a deep fake render of their own CEO. All of that background, the whole thing is a real scene that's been recreated in 3D, in real time. And in 2022, it's claimed that a Binance executive was actually deepfaked on Zoom in video and audio. That's when I started thinking, like, oh, this is scary. He found out about it because people on Twitter were saying, thanks for the meeting with me earlier. It's like, I didn't have a meeting with you earlier. What was it? It's like, it was a video meeting. Like, no, I didn't. And of course, this person was giving out really interesting investment advice. But the advancements in AI scale and speed means that social engineering attacks will be even more targeted as well. If you have an online presence, then start hoovering up, if they already haven't, start hoovering up all of the data they can to present it back to you in an attack form. Your digital twin, like, kind of held captive by cyber criminals. They'll attack you, and they'll attack those who know you as well, in really increasingly convincing ways through text. We've already seen that where, hi, it's me, Mum, can you, or whatever, can you send me out, I'm in jail in Colombia or something. But then there'll be voice and video attacks. Aside from not having an online presence, like what do you do? I mean, they can even use your LinkedIn against you. I've had some very dubious connection requests. We can go even further down the rabbit hole in the thefts of what is you, because AI biometric replication is becoming a thing. You can create synthetic biometric data like fingerprints, voice, and facial recognition patterns, to the point where it will be able to deceive biometric security soon. That means that really we will have to, like we had an uplifting of cryptographic key lengths when we realized you could solve them in a minute. We're going to have to do the same thing with our sophistication of any kind of biometrics that we're using. They've found that recent capture technology is now using like kind of a blend of mouse moves and all kinds of stuff. So when you just click on this thing that says I'm not a robot, it's like, oh, that's awfully trusting, but it's doing some browser history, some motion tracking, some interesting stuff that I don't fully know. But very soon that won't be enough. It will simulate all of that very, very soon. But the attacks on the human element are based on a number of key factors. Trust in the senses, because really, historically, seeing or hearing was often believing. And in tech up until recently, even videos and audio, it kind of was the case. Our senses provide the raw data, our brains process them, interpret them, store them as memories or experiences. And deepfakes challenge this trust. When we encounter highly realistic content, our fundamental trust in our senses is undermined, which is also very scary. But then when we see something that conflicts with our beliefs or perceptions, we experience cognitive dissonance. And these defects may either cause this dissonance or be used to resolve it by providing fabricated evidence to support pre-existing belief. So you can see a fake news report and go, haha, so it's okay for me to be prejudiced now because that thing happened when that thing didn't happen. And memory and recall. Memory, according to neurosciences, is very, very malleable. And if you start seeing fake events and fake news and fake recollection of reality, it will actually start to change your memories, which is very scary because a lot of our memories are kind of what we base our reality on. And at some point, you'll start believing it was a genuine event. And the emotional response, sometimes even a deepfake doesn't have to be that convincing if it makes you very angry or very happy or very excited, because you then just switch off the logic processing part of your brain and you go, that's great, I want some of that. There's also things like the validation through social consensus. If a piece of media is moved enough times, people start to, you want to fall into line with it and say, oh, I believe that as well. And then to counter the threat of that, there's kind of a bit of defensive skepticism, which is kind of fine, but actually taken to an extreme, if there's too much fake material around, then you'll actually stop trusting the stuff that's genuine. That becomes a problem, because that actually has an impact on authentic content and authentic advice. And mitigating all this human impact is pretty tricky. Educating the public will help. Legislation and regulation is on its way. The laws against the malicious use of deepfakes can deter misuse at certain kind of casual attacks, but nation states and other countries, they're not going to follow the law, so the regulation really isn't going to solve it for us. But it isn't all negative. AI, or at least the algorithms, are neutral. We're not going to get into transparency and explainability and bias here. But we look at this with an entirely negative lens. We have to recognise we can use some of these tools for defence and countermeasures. So we need to leverage this AI revolution. And the questions of governance and legislation, the genie's out of the bottle on this tech. It exists already. The maths is there. It's like saying you can't have encryption. It's like too late, mate. It exists already. The maths exist. The industry is responding with countermeasures for the technical elements. Threat detection and prediction have been supercharged. Traditional malware detection, which was signature-based, is now moved to AI-based. LLMs are great for things like threat intelligence data, correlating and providing up-to-date and concise information. I use a roundup every day, or using an LLM to see all of the latest threats. And operationally, AI can help automate things like incident management and response. It can help actually get you there quicker. Being part of the mitigation stance really is how we talk about these emerging challenges. We can only do that if we keep our own understanding of the threat landscape really, really fresh all the time, and it's moving quickly. So in summary, in my opinion, and this is backed by research, the human-centric element of cybersecurity when it comes to AI attacks is going to be a bigger factor in the future for cybersecurity and the dark side of it, cybercrime. Thank you very much.